As we conclude our series on the foundational pillars of leadership, in this episode, we're going to be bringing it all together and breaking down the 3 tenets of integrity, demonstrating humility and having self-awareness, consistently using sound judgment, and being the type of leader that is transparent and is trusted. So grab your snacks, your coffee, whatever you need, because this is going to be a good one.
Right about now, you are listening to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, a show where we discuss living as a leader worth following, leading others to do the same, and in doing so, leaving a legacy for future generations. My name is Jimmie Gonzalez Jr., a learning and development professional and leadership coach, sitting down with my co-host, Anthony Devon Watts Jr., an expert contact center leader that has effectively led and developed dynamic teams with high motivation. Together, we have over 30 years experience in the corporate game. Join us as we discuss our growth as leaders, share the lessons we've learned, and interview others to see how their leadership style was shaped as they were mentored by adversity. Coming back at you once again, our legacy leaders. This is the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, episode number 15, with your co-host Jimmie Gonzalez, along with my very good friend and co-host Anthony Devon Watts Jr.
What's up, leaders?
Yes, we are very excited about this next episode. Again, about to jump into the foundational pillars or some more foundational pillars of effective leadership. Hope you enjoyed the last episode and that you really did some mining and picked up all of the golden nuggets that we were dropping for you in episode 14. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and check it out. And while you're doing those type of things, number one, make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel and make sure that you start downloading and subscribe to whatever favorite podcast platform you're using. Subscribe to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast and leave us a review, especially if you're on Apple iTunes and that's your favorite spot. Make sure that, again, you leave us a review. We would greatly, greatly appreciate it. Again,
Absolutely.
show us some feedback and give us some love from that perspective. Number two, take a little screenshot, take a snapshot, and whether you go to your stories on Instagram or either on Facebook and post that screenshot to your stories, tag us at Legacy Leadership, tag myself at Coach_Jimmie G Jr., and then tag Devon at Leadership Docent. My bad.
Leadership Docent, yeah.
All these legacies. So yeah, tag us, please. And again, leave some comments and some feedback. Let us know what you think about the episode and join in on the conversation as well. We would greatly appreciate that. And then number 3, share. Share this episode whether you're on YouTube or, again, via the podcast platform that you use. Share this with your friends, with your family, and other legacy leaders, and let's get them into this tribe and this community that we are building and growing from this point. So yeah, do those 3 things. We appreciate it very much and for your continued support as we go down this journey. Yes. So I know that a little low on energy, but we're going to get this thing cranked up.
Yep.
I'm feeling good. I told you that it has been a very good day, but a long day. I am actually off today and the next couple of days. So I started with a nice bike ride with my neighbors, making a habit out of that. There's some really cool folks, man, and it's just been a good opportunity. Want to get to know them better and continue to build relationships, right? And love thy neighbor, and in these bike rides, man, just continuing to try to improve in that.
Do you have a bike, or are you using their bike?
Yeah, man. Really, again, just really good people, man. They have 4 totals, 2 main ones that the husband and wife uses, and then kind of their original bikes that they use or used. They allow me to use that. But yeah, I'm having those thoughts already. I'm like, I can't, I don't want to keep putting wear and tear on their stuff. So if I'm going to continue to do this on a consistent basis, I'm going to have to take a look into it.
Well, I know the bike game, is no joke. We have some really good friends of ours, Lissa and my boy Mike, who, they are, religious about riding. And so to kind of see them go on their journey with, the custom wheels and, that, and the brakes, and then changing the gears. And Mike is a bit of a gearhead. because he also races. So he does racing instruction, and then he also races. So he has his own car and stuff like that he's modded. But it's like kind of that same mentality, like car racing, like in bicycle form. And so it's like super intense. So I was just curious, like, because I think like once you start down that rabbit hole, like it's deep, man. Like you're in it.
Oh, I see it. I'm like calculating numbers in my mind, going through the financials. They're like, yeah, this is an expensive sport. I'm like, yeah, I can tell. I mean, these bikes, like if you want a really good bike, easy a couple of grand. Easy, but that's even like getting stuff on sale. But 6,000, 7,000, for those really lightweight bikes, like you said, with the really nice rims. But then all the gadgets, the Garmin thing that tracks your time and how fast you're going, lights for the bike. There's a whole bunch of accessories and different stuff. And then the outfits. Got to have the right shorts and the shirt and
Jimmie Armstrong.
Yeah, for sure. Got to have the helmet. So I got to at least start doing that, buying like the helmet and some of the accessories and getting to it from that point. The first thing that I did invest in, which I didn't know existed until I started riding with them, are the special shorts that you buy that have like pads on the backside.
In case you fall?
No. It just hurts, bro. Like, sitting
just
there
riding?
for miles and miles. You have to get used to it. But having that padding on the backside, it helps to absorb some of the pressure and stuff like that. So that was the first thing that I've purchased. But yeah, it's a good time, man. Good workout. It's definitely different, from the type of workouts that I've done in the past. It's really definitely good at burning additional calories and burning some fat. So been enjoying that. And like I told you, today was phase 1 of this artwork that I am getting on my arm. So got 2 more sessions left, but excited about the tat and getting the sleeve on the left arm. So, kind of a long time coming. I've been talking about it for a minute, but finally, just kind of bit the bullet and getting it done. So
it's gonna look really good when it's finished.
Yeah, I'm
it's
excited to
really
see.
Good.
Appreciate that, man. The final product. But yeah, I mean, obviously I went there because I got a good recommendation from you. You've gotten a few from this particular artist.
Shout
Enrique.
out Kalisti.
Yeah, exactly.
Kalisti Arts.
So excited about that. So then, I got home, not too long ago before we jumped on and ready to go. So ready to get into, again, these foundational pillars of effective leadership, specifically focusing on integrity. You doing all right today, though?
Yeah, I am. Actually, I was just thinking, I was like, man, I probably do need a new tattoo, though, because, I make it a point of, like, anytime a big milestone has happened in my life, to get a new piece. I would say, starting the podcast, that's a big milestone for sure. I'm like, man, I don't really have anything that matches up with that. And, I already look, like I told you before, I already look like a Chipotle bag. So it doesn't hurt to add a little bit more ink, but outside of that, man, I'm absolutely doing well. Like I shared with you, a little bit low energy. Don't really know what it is. It's just in the air, but it is what it is. I will power through. One thing I've learned very early on in my life is that you have to be able to turn it on and perform when the stadium lights are on. All right, and it's game time, and so I am suited up, and the lights are on, and I promise you, I will perform. So
I got no doubts about that for sure.
Sure. And then outside of that, like nothing really too crazy happened this weekend. I mean, it was pretty chill for the most part. Obviously, I was sharing with you guys a little bit of good feedback about just kind of the last episode. People enjoying kind of the little tongue-in-cheekness of, the fact that this is not a sports podcast, and kind of us playing around with that. But I also got to chop it up with Pops too. I was sharing with you, and I'll share with our listeners. We unfortunately had a passing in the family. My great uncle, Eddie, Uncle Eddie, passed away from cancer. He's like stage 4. So he was passed away 72, obviously, growing up, he's family and stuff like that, and he's my father's uncle, right? And so my father has like kind of all these vivid memories of just different childhood experiences he's had with Unc, right? Anybody who has an uncle or is an uncle, you know, kind of the role you play, you know, in your nephews and your niece's life of just, you know, loving on them, spoiling them, and being somewhat of a disciplinary, but also being the cool one that like kind of undermines and plays, you know, their parents just a little bit because I can do that, you know what I mean? Because I'm the sibling, and so, you know, obviously my father just has these memories of who his uncle is, you know, who his uncle was as a man, and then as a, you know, obviously he grew, and then I came, right, and then my sister came, you know, to see that relationship evolve, and then kind of the memories I have, you know, of my Uncle Eddie. And but the thing that I was the most floored with, you know, I was just talking to Pops, and obviously because of, you know, COVID, you know, it just makes everything, you know, logistically a little bit more challenging, right? And Uncle Eddie was very insistent when he passed that he was like, hey, I don't want any traditional funeral. I want you guys to cremate me, and I want you to treat it as a celebration. So like, if y'all are getting together, like, y'all need to live it up, turn up, have a good time, barbecue. Like, that's what he was about. Like, y'all need to barbecue. Like, I don't want, you know, the normal processional and, you know, in the church and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so there's obviously people that wanted to, you know, pay their respects. And so, you know, this is not new, but you see a lot of churches and things like that use funeral homes using, you know, virtual boards. So that people can leave memories and, you know, make donations on behalf of the family, you know, and, you know, flower arrangements or planting trees or stuff like that. And so the thing that I was just the most overwhelmed with, right, is obviously, you know, when you're talking about your family, you have these vivid memories and images of just who that individual was and what they meant to you, right? And I think sometimes it's a loss on you. It can be lost on you because you think, well, that's, you know, family. And so that the intimacy of those memories are just limited to what the family experience. But as I started to read through his memorial wall and just hearing all of these people from across the United States and different places that they've lived that are not family, that are not blood, that you know, haven't had any interaction with him, you know, in, you know, 30, 40 years. You know, make it a point to reach out and share specific memories and instances and situations and words that he's passed, you know, that he may have shared, or, you know, how he treated them in a certain moment. Because there's a long line, you know, of, you know, people in my family that, you know, end up in, you know, leadership roles, primarily in like the, you know, public service space. So my Uncle Eddie, you know, he was a law enforcement officer. My his father, my great grandfather, you know, he was in the military, right? And so my Uncle Eddie, he ended up retiring from law enforcement as a lieutenant. So he had a lot of people that, you know, just kind of under his stewardship, and officers that he was responsible for kind of developing and training up and showing the ropes and the whole nine. And so to see these people like make a concerted effort to reach out and just kind of share these moments and these experiences, like I couldn't help but like just think like this is like encapsulates a lot of the things that we talk about when we're talking about being a leader we're following, when we're talking about leaving a legacy, when we're talking about creating an impact. Like it's these folks that, you know, after, you know, you've, you know, been called home and you left this earth, that they remember moments from 30 or 45 years ago where you showed compassion and humility and support and care, and they can draw on that and they can say that had a profound impact on me, that put me on a different trajectory, that helped change my perspective on things, you know, like to see that and to see pages, man, just pages. Like I got stuck just kind of going through my phone and just reading what people were saying. And it, you know, not all of it was like super, you know, profound. Like, hey, you know, I had this, you know, trouble in life and he set me down and, you know, took me to the side and talked to me about life and philosophy. Like there were some of those, but even the simple ones is like, man, he was just such a pleasure. Like I remember every time we walked into the courtroom, you know, he would make it a point to greet me with high energy, right? High energy, and just to tell me hi and to find out how I'm doing, but then also remember specific things about my family and ask me about them on the occasion that we cross once a month, right? Or, I remember how much he loved life, and he was known for being a connoisseur of cheap whiskey and and barbecue food. You know what I mean? Like, it's those things that really cement or encapsulate what we talk about when we're talking about being a legacy leader, right? Because we all hold leadership roles in our lives in various capacity. Like, even if you're not running a team and you have a formalized leadership role at work and all that stuff, and you don't have the title manager or whatever, right? Like, you and I've talked about this. That's not what makes you a leader, right? You can be a leader in your household. You can be a leader with your friends. You can be a leader in your spiritual community. You can be a leader in your community, period, right? And not have these traditional roles or titles, but be seen as a leader because you are a leader, because of how you influence and how you treat and how you touch and how you impact people. And so to just kind of see that, like, the formalized of, like, I used to report to him and he had this impact on me, and then the informal of, like, we used to just chop it up at the golf club, right? And he was just a character and just a great spirit, like, all of that, just, it was overwhelming, and it just seemed appropriate and kind of really good, a really good reminder of the mission that you and I set out on when we put this together, and to share these thoughts and our experiences and try and build this community of legacy leaders. It's to have that type of impact, is to attract people who want to have that type of impact, and so I'm excited because it also just dovetails really nicely when we talk about integrity, because if I could summarize everything I read on his memorial board, like, it was the epitome, the definition of a man that had lived his life with, like, profound integrity. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of to jump into that and kind of talk about it with our legacy leaders and our listeners, and pull from that whatever lessons that Uncle Eddie feels the need to pass on, through me, right, to those that are listening that didn't get the opportunity to know him, but will know his impact.
No, I appreciate you sharing that, man, and my condolences, to you and the family. But I love just hearing, those snippets and how, it impacted you, and how he had an impact on so many people's lives. And you said it, bro. That's exactly the heart of what we're doing and what we're trying to teach and to pass on, to our folks out there. I mean, there's just so much negativity and hate, that is out there and that is spewed these days. And it just, man, make somebody smile, like, make an impact. And the thing is, you just being yourself in the things that we're talking about, you may not even realize the type of impact that you have on an individual. But like you said, 20, 30, years later, and, that person, their grandchild or something like that can be hearing or reading those comments and realize, again, the full breadth of the impact that this person had. Be a good neighbor, be a good friend. Smile at people, say hello, even if they don't say hello back, wave at people. Be fully engaged in conversations with people, and not have an agenda, what I mean? And just talking to people for the sake of talking, but to really gain a better understanding. If you have an agenda, like, really try to gain a better understanding of where they're coming from and how they're feeling. And again, especially, during this time where people don't know what to think, or they're thinking way too much, and they're somewhat even paralyzed because they're trying to analyze situations and everything that's going on, and maybe don't know how to handle the pandemic and the social unrest and injustice and politics and everything that's going on. And just talk to people, smile at folks, give them a pat on the back, show folks some love. If they're the hugging type, give them a hug. Whatever that thing is. But again, just don't slip on the opportunity that we all have to truly make an impact on that person for that day, but also not recognizing as you plant seeds how, a conversation that you may have, a laugh, a key nugget that you provide, how that might really, again, not just even impact them, but impact their family in the future. So, yeah, definitely a good segue into today's topic, and kind of ending this series of foundational pillars of effective leadership, and bringing it all together with kind of how you just talked about Uncle Eddie, and bringing it all together with integrity. And the first tenet that we wanted to dive into was the importance of demonstrating humility and just being self-aware. Being self-aware of, we talked about your strengths and assessments and stuff that you can do, but also being aware of your blind spots. So, well, Jimmie, how are you going to be aware there are blind spots for a reason? But we all have them. But in order to find out about those, you have to ask, and you have to be open to getting feedback and be humble in that process to say, I know I have them because I'm not perfect. I might not know what they are, but help me out, kind of really think about it and kind of help me out in some of those areas. So being self-aware and being humble, recognizing that, as great as we may feel we are, and as confident as we are, and as great orators as we may be, none of us are perfect, and none of us have it all figured out. So, and while people do, I think, appreciate confidence, right? It's that fine line between confidence and then being cocky, right? And people don't like that, right? They don't like when somebody is overly cocky about themselves, and even in a demonstrative way. So there's definitely something to be said about being humble in yourself, and putting others before yourself, and then again being self-aware. So in doing so, seeking out feedback, and how do you do that, right? So there's some simple ways that you can do that. We'll talk about a couple. One that I wanted to mention. This was, I believe you were on my team at the time. I can't remember exactly. But I knew I wanted feedback, and maybe at the time too, we were having a lot of discussions about like 360 surveys and stuff like that. And on one of our previous episodes, I said I even did one with my family. I had my wife and my kids fill one out. But that was it was really great feedback to get from my family, but at my job. So I sent out this 360 feedback survey to my team that reported to me, to my counterparts, to business partners in other sites, in other places within Florida that I supported, and really, again, went into it looking to see, okay, yeah, what are the things I do good, but what are the areas of opportunity that I have? And again, what are those blind spots? What are those things that maybe other people see that I'm not seeing, but I really need to know those things? So creating a survey, and I'm sure you can Google it and find, a number of different 360 surveys, and sent that out, got feedback, and it was for me. And I didn't necessarily talk to people about it, but it was just for me to read, to analyze, and then from there, okay, some of it you're going to take with a grain of salt, some of it you're going to really analyze a little bit more. But once you have that compilation of information, it's, what do I need to do next, right? What are the next steps to strengthen some of my strengths and those areas of opportunity? How do I feel about that? What, if anything, can I do to improve those areas? And then start putting, making some goals and putting some action plans in place to reach that. The second kind of tactic that you can use, or strategy, that I'm in the process of doing now. So listen up, because you're one of the folks that I'll be asking this question to, as I kind of continue to go down, this path of somewhat self-discovery, but really just trying to continue to figure things out within myself. Just ask, people that you're close with and that you trust. In my best moments, what are some words that you would use to describe Jimmie? In my worst moments, what are some words that you would use to describe me? You know what I mean? And, get a good enough sample size, again, from people that you trust and that you're closest to, whether it's 5, 10 people, whatever that number is. And then, start to kind of pinpoint what are some of those words, right, that they use to describe you that match up, that are alike. And that, as you kind of go through that process, and actually I got this specific idea from that book I told you I've been reading, To Be Told. But it really helps you, especially if you go back, and people that have known you for a very long time. There's going to be certain, elements that you see and themes that you see, and it really just helps you to, again, really understand kind of the story of your life, and helps you to continue to rewrite, not rewrite, but co-author, your story and your life as you continue to move forward. That's how the book breaks it down. But again, in the act of being self-aware and gaining feedback, in my best moments, what are some words that you'll use to describe me? And in some of my bad or worse moments, what are some words that you'll use to describe me? But you have to be open to that. You have to be receptive to the feedback, and you cannot allow yourself to get defensive, because in that humility, like, you're doing it because you want to know how other people think, but more importantly, you also want to improve, right? And we all do things at times that are not intentional, and we may say things or do things that hurt people's feelings or make them feel a particular way that we had no intention of doing. And if sometimes it's on that other person, but if there's things that I can do to make adjustments and change that so it doesn't happen again, I want to be able to know those things, because we all make impacts, right? But again, as we talked about, with your Uncle Eddie, is how do we make impacts that are very positive and that are very long lasting and that leave a very positive legacy for us and in the minds and in the hearts of the people that we're around.
Oh, 100%, man. The thing that comes to mind, actually, we were talking about that, about the self-awareness and the humility is, for me, I always found the most powerful tool in a leader's tool belt, the most enduring characteristic of an exceptional leader is one that has a willingness to be led.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
And, specifically, like you said, seeking out feedback so that they can continue to improve and to get better, and to not just be satisfied with past accomplishments or past successes, or to fixate on, obviously their best attributes, but to also make a concerted effort to find out where they're falling short, and to say, well, is there something of value in that feedback that I can do something about immediately, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're truly in leadership for the pure reason of trying to serve others, right, then that feedback is invaluable. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day how great of a job I think I'm doing right, as a leader, if those that I've been entrusted to steward are giving me feedback to the contrary, right, my job is to deliver for them, not to deliver for my ego. So I love the tips that you provided around soliciting feedback through a 360. I think, that's always value added. In fact, it's a nice reminder for myself too, because I'm coming up on day 90 in my organization. I'm like, it's probably a good time to say, okay, 90-day check-in, and just get feedback from, those that I partner with, those that I report to, those that report to me, the whole nine. So that's something that I'm absolutely going to do. And then also the advice of just being able to ask those that you truly trust. And I think that's the other thing too, right, is another key attribute or, skill set that a leader can possess is discernment to know who to solicit feedback from or to seek counsel from, right? I think that's critically important, right? If you don't have the discernment to be able to identify those that really have your best interests at heart as a leader and those that do not, right? And then you start seeking feedback from those that never had your best interests at heart in the first place, right? And you heed that and apply it, right? And you fall short of what you expect of yourself as a leader. You can't be mad at anybody in that situation but yourself, because you lack the discernment to know whose counsel to seek out, right? I think that's the other attribute is, being able to demonstrate the wisdom to know who to reach out to for wisdom, like as slightly convoluted as that may sound, right? You have to be able to have the wisdom to know who to seek out for wisdom, right? And guidance, right? And so I think that is critically important. And it's funny, right? Because going back to Uncle Eddie's memorial board, like I'm reading through again some of the comments that people provided, and there's so many things that just stick out that align to his humility, like demonstrating his humility, right? His self-awareness. There's a specific situation where somebody was a brand new officer on the job, and he was just struggling with making the transition and making mistakes like everybody does in their new job. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And the one night he made a bad one. Like, it's one of those, like, oh man, like this is not one of those I'm gonna just get coached. This may be one of those, depending on how they want to take the discussion, I could end up no longer employed, right? It's just a lapse in judgment, right? A lapse in judgment and just a bonehead mistake, a bad decision, right? And in that situation, see, my Uncle Eddie at the time, he just had a little bit of a reputation of being somewhat of a hard ass, like, most of us Wattsmen, it's like in our bloodline, like we just come across that way, right? At least when we're on it, when we're about business, you know what I mean? But so this officer was just expecting to just get kind of taken up through there and told about himself in a professional way, but a very clear way, told about himself. And in that moment, my Uncle Eddie demonstrated, compassion and empathy, and used it instead of, telling him how, he had made a bonehead mistake. Shared a story with him about how he made a similar mistake when he was a brand new officer. And the humility, right? The humility to be able to expose that I made mistakes before. I don't have it all together. Like, I never always had it all together, right? Like, it took me being intentional and working at this to get to the point that I'm at right now in my life, as a leader, as an officer, as a man, right? Like, to me, that's just extremely powerful. It goes back to what you're talking about, right? Like, to be able to demonstrate that humility and that self-awareness to realize, why would I hold them as a brand new officer to an expectation that I couldn't meet when I was a brand new officer, right? And then to be able to undo whatever facade or image somebody may have about me as a leader as being flawless,
Mm-hmm.
right? As almost an unattainable standard, right? And therefore not something that they should, even try to emulate or model. I'm going to demonstrate humility by showing my flaws, by sharing a flaw, with the intent of using it as a teaching vehicle and being able to connect and to show how the standard the image you have of me is one that's attainable, so you should have it of yourself. It becomes more tangible. It becomes relatable. It doesn't become abstract. It doesn't become unattainable, right? Again, that's the power and the self-awareness and the humility. It's not just being able to be better as a leader, but it's also being able to make deeper, more impactful and rich connections. A connection that from that moment was so strong that 40 years later, this same man is seeking out the message board, right, to share this memory with family members, right, because he got wind of the passing of somebody that had a profound impact on him early on in his career, and he felt compelled to pass that forward, because obviously while that moment may have lasted 5 minutes, the ripples reverberated over 3 decades, 4 decades, right, and still has a profound impact on his heart today. Like, the self-awareness and the humility, man, is just critically important.
Man, there's a few things that you said in there that definitely caught my attention. You mentioned the word discernment, but as we're kind of going through these different tenets, right, specifically in regards to bringing it together with integrity, I know we were going to talk about one thing, but I can't help but want to jump to what you just said, and kind of tie it into transparency and is trusted, right? Being known for somebody who's transparent and somebody who's trusted. Well, having that humility and humbling yourself and expressing those type of mistakes, But those learning lessons, like, none of us are perfect, number one. Number two, none of us just came out the womb and like, boom,
Yeah, I
leader,
got
I
it.
know everything. Like, we all made mistakes that led us to this point. And being able to talk about those things, when you hear that phrase kind of displays managerial courage, like, to me, that's the type of courage that we're talking about, right? It's not a lack of fear. It's maybe being a little bit nervous to share some of those stories, but doing it anyway because there's a lesson that you learned, and there's a lesson to be learned for this other person. And at the very least, even if that lesson is, we all make mistakes, like, it's okay. Let me tell you about a time that I did something very similar and how I was able to learn from that and use that and kind of look, how that has helped impact me and get me to where I'm at today. Being able to share those type of stories with, somebody who is new in their career or new in a role. I mean, they're nervous, they're trying to figure things out. They're trying to learn, hopefully, and being able to share those stories, again, it displays a level of transparency, and it displays and expresses that you are somebody that can be trusted, because you're not acting as if you have everything figured out, or that maybe you have everything figured out now, but that's because you've gone through some things, you've made mistakes, and you've been able to learn from those. And I think in doing so, there's a very high level of honesty. So then you also become somebody who is viewed as somebody who demonstrates integrity, somebody who demonstrates trust. Because I have to be able to be vulnerable in those situations as well and say, you know what? I'm going to trust you with this information, right? I'm going to trust you with some of these past experiences. And again, humble yourself and be vulnerable in those moments as well, to display that courage. And again, start to allow yourself in that person's eyes, hopefully, to be viewed as somebody that, again, demonstrates integrity, trust, and is very transparent in how they conduct their business.
No, absolutely, man. It's crazy too, because like when you talk about like how that, like, being humble, the humility, it ties into the trust, it ties into the transparency feed to that, and then ties into this bigger theme of integrity, which we're unpacking, right? Like, I go back and I'm reading, just kind of what the same individual shared, and it was to me it was powerful, and I'll just share with you in the audience here, right? But they essentially said that the internet does not have enough bandwidth to accommodate all the praise and appreciation that I and those that know Eddie Watts have to say about this truly great man. There are many stories to be told of how Eddie was always there to try to keep an officer from getting into trouble, and when you got into trouble, he was there to get you out of it. And they go on to say, I called him Steady Eddie for his demeanor, composure, dependability, and his true friendship. He made my life and the world a better place. You may not always remember what a person said, but you will always remember how they made you feel. And I was privileged to know Eddie Watts, right? Again, man, like, those are the things that we talk about that sum it up, right? Like, and I think the real beauty in all of that, it's something that we've talked about, through several episodes. It's kind of been through line for all of these, right, is the genuineness, the sincerity in which these things are done. He wasn't going into these interactions saying, well, man, he's gonna have something great to say about me once I leave this earth. That's not where it came from. It came from a genuine, deep, loving, caring place of connecting, right? Connecting with somebody who needed you in that moment. And I love what you were talking about, and even taking this a step further and drawing back parallels to, or drawing back connections to what's going on right now in the world, and how to process all this, and all this stuff seeming overwhelming, and we want to if those aspire to make a change, and how can I make a change, and I'm one person, and this is a big world, and it's a big country, and it's how can I tackle these huge issues that in transparency have never been really resolved in the 200 plus years of our nation, right? And I can't help but think back to this and that interaction with that one individual. The way you do it is, you make a change in your direct community. You make a change in those that are directly in your sphere. And if everybody is just doing that, if you are treating people with compassion, transparency, being self-aware, humility, making connections, if you're doing that with those that are directly in your sphere and they're doing it with theirs and they're doing it with theirs, that's how you make the change. It's not one movement of change, one monumental change, right? It's these, multiple pebbles of just tiny changes within our own personal communities that creates this groundswell of change that we experience everywhere else. And so, you don't have to change the world, right? Change the lives of those that are directly in your community. And if you do that, the world will change along with it.
Because in doing so, you are changing your world, and you're influencing your world and your environment. And I appreciate what you just said, and that's admirable. For people that are trying to do what they can and be a part of these massive changes. But even from kind of a mission field's perspective, I always tell folks, like, the mission field is wherever God has you. That neighborhood that you live in, that job that you have, the team, like we're entrusted with those individuals that are around us, especially if you see yourself as a leader or you're a budding leader and you're growing into yourself and what that means for you to really be a legacy leader. Do your best to make those impacts right where you are. And again, that's how you start to change your world and your environment, or at least have an influence and have a positive influence, and hopefully, inspire others to want to do the same. And as long as we keep taking those small steps, man, I like what you said, kind of the ripple effect and what that has on those people that are around us. So, man, I appreciate you reading those things. I mean, just even. It's very heartfelt, what I mean, for me, and just meaningful just to hear those type of comments and words. And when he's like, the internet doesn't even have bandwidth. Like,
now that's a bar.
For real, that is a bar. That is a bar for sure.
Shout out Marty. Marty was the one who left that message. Good old Marty.
But that was good, man. That was deep. So I mean, there's be transparent with folks, do what you can to be open and honest. That again builds and gains trust. And as you're working on those things, so again, we're tying all of this in and impacting, how do we really live a life full of integrity? So demonstrating humility and gaining self-awareness, really operating in a mode of transparency and in a way that is helping you to build trust. And then going back to that word discernment, the third tenet that we really wanted to speak of is you're consistently using discernment and really, sound judgment in those moments. And I'm still going to tie it back to that story because, you mentioned it, there was discernment, there was wisdom from your uncle at that time to say, you know what, I could handle it this way, but I'm going to handle it this way and be vulnerable and share a story that hopefully they'll relate to from some mistakes I made and some things that I learned along the way. But even that, there is a certain level, I think, of maturity, right, and experience that you go through. And we talked about it before, really getting those reps to have a higher level of sound judgment and discernment in your own life. But it's just making good decisions, making good decisions and basing that on, analyzing experiences and your judgment on certain things, and then thinking through the impact on the decisions that you're going to make. I remember Jason Palmisano. He's the founder of Trinity Fitness Ministries, and which we had a chapter. Actually, I'm wearing the shirt today. Did not do that on purpose, I promise you. We had our chapter here in Central Florida, Orlando, and prior to that, he he would go around and kind of do these talks and share the gospel, but he would do it, with painting, and he's an artist as well, right? Anyway, so there's this picture that I bought from him that said, your decisions will echo in eternity. So when I think about something like that, it's how do I really do my best to think through, again, analyzing my experiences and how those experiences are affecting or helping to influence the decision I'm going to make. Am I using sound judgment in that moment? And then thinking through the impact of these decisions. And sometimes as a leader, it's difficult. Right? There's difficult decisions that we have to make. And a lot of times as a leader, as the leader, you have to make decisions that are going to have a negative impact on other people. But it has to be done. The leader has to make those tough decisions kind of for the greater good of the group, of the team, of the organization, kind of wherever you fall, kind of in that pecking order. But having the courage, again, to make those decisions, but thinking through the impact, and then how do you prepare for that? Right. All right. I know we have to make this decision. These are things that we have to do. How do I prepare for that impact? How do I prepare for those conversations that I'm going to have because of the impact that this decision is going to have? And, we've seen it personally in our own lives, and, people having to make decisions to furlough people and to let people go. So many companies, that I've heard of, and that we just know, even if you're just watching the news and stuff, that have to make these decisions again that have a massive impact on the company and definitely have a massive impact on the lives of those people.
No, absolutely. Like you said, being able to have the discernment in those difficult situations, and be able to make sound decisions, sound judgment, and it's a skill. It's a skill that can be developed. I think that's important for people to understand. It's not like, you are, we're born omnipotent and we can just okay, I just know what to do in this situation, right?
Yeah.
I think the other thing too, going back to, what I talked about with discernment is, being able to know who to collaborate with or reach out to for counsel as you're weighing these options and these decisions. I can, pull from my experience, with having to make the difficult decision around, furloughs and people's employment, when the pandemic hit, and, how do you make sure that, you're turning over every single stone and you're really thinking through this properly, and that you've explored every opportunity to impact the fewest amount of people as possible, and that those that are impacted, that you can deliver the message to them, look them in their eye and come from a place of transparency and honesty, and know that you truly did everything in your power in order to avoid the situation. And yet, here we are, and the decision has to be made for the greater good. And I can also confidently articulate why we came to this decision and why it unfortunately impacted you, right? I've always appreciated that. I've always tried to operate that way as a leader. Just if we were having to make decisions like that, nobody else was going to deliver the message but me. Even if it meant it was an all-day event and I had to, schedule it and meet with folks and back-to-back, and, be prepared to also have the difficult conversations and help people manage through the litany of emotions they go through when they hear when they get that type of news, right? Whether it's anger, sadness, all that stuff, right? How do you in that moment still provide comfort or provide a safe space for people to work through what they need to work through, having to hear something so difficult and deliver the message with the appropriate level of empathy and concern, right? I would say the other thing about sound judgment too, though, is it's twofold, right? It's not just being able to have sound judgment to know how to handle these situations, but it's also about having sound judgment and when knowing to push back or challenge or have healthy friction, right? And to speak truth to power, right? Speak truth to power, and be an advocate for those that you're a steward of. I can think about, a couple of recent experiences that I've had where, the direction that the organization wanted to go in, that the broader business wanted to go in, didn't necessarily align with the thoughts, the feelings, the sentiments of, our down chain leadership, team. And, having to sit in those rooms and, be one of the voices of dissent and be able to speak truth to the power when the majority rule was, no, well, we're still going to go in this direction, and you have to be the one that says, look, I think we're, I think going in that direction could be potentially a mistake, and that we have to listen to our people, and this is what our people are telling us. And I think that there may be a happy medium, but what we're pursuing right now is not a compromise at all, right? And it's going to do irreparable damage to the relationship and the trust that we have with these individuals. And I think we have an opportunity to stop, listen, maybe pivot our strategy, and that is not easy. Those discussions are not easy. But as a leader who truly has integrity, you understand the value of, again, healthy friction and being able to push back in a professional way, and know that you're charged with being an advocate for those that are under your leadership. And you have to truly believe it, right? And so even before you have those discussions, right, it's sanity checking it, right? It's knowing who to reach out to. It's, reaching out to other people that you trust and saying, hey, this is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm thinking about it. What are your thoughts? Am I off base? And being prepared to have that healthy friction and that healthy discussion, right? And then if you get validation, that your thoughts, your guts, your decision-making, your discernment is in alignment and it's the right thing to do, then it's about the integrity of following through, and giving a voice to those that feel like they're the voiceless. And so definitely it's twofold. Like you have to be comfortable doing that. That's what integrity really looks like. Again, not being afraid to deal with conflict in a respectful and a productive way, and demonstrating balanced thought when conflicting information exists, right? Because that's one of the worst things you can do as a leader is, just be very entrenched in your thinking, even in the face of new facts. Like I hate that, to be honest with you. I like people who value that. People value stubbornness, blind stubbornness, even with the existence of new facts, or confronting somebody with new facts, where they don't even take the time to process it. They dismiss it and they stay entrenched in where they're at. You're not strong to me. You know what I mean? Like, that's not leadership. That's not decisiveness. Whatever you want to call it, whatever adjective you want to try and assign to it to make you feel good about it. That's not what it is. People read it for what it is. It's weak. It's scared. It's fear. It's fear of being wrong. It's ego, right? And and real leaders see it for what it is, and they file it away. And that tells them everything they need to know about you as a leader. That when confronted with challenging and difficult situations, you allow yourself to be ruled by fear, right? And you act out of self-preservation instead of the interests of others. And that tells me everything I need to know about you. So.
Yeah, I'm just, as I'm listening to you and digesting that, that's what we're talking about to our folks out here, is being a leader worth following. You can be a leader, and you can look at present time, you can go down through history on leaders who executed really well, but when you really analyze that individual, they were not somebody who you would want to follow, right? And are they the type of leader, are you the type of leader that has that integrity, that has these key aspects that we're discussing, but that is truly trying to do things for the good of other people, right? With morals and with ethics, and all of those things tie into your level of integrity. And as you do so, kind of the last point that I'll make too is that as you grow in that manner and you're consistent in being somebody who shows very sound judgment and a high level of discernment, is that people will start to seek you out for advice and for solutions, because you're showing that consistency, you're showing that good judgment. And I would think that that's also something that we all aspire to, right? As we continue to grow, and especially as parents, like, you want your kids to seek your advice and to hopefully provide maybe not the complete solution, but give them some different things to think about, and your team, the people that are around you and that report to you, that they see you in that light. Again, they're going to come to you for advice. They're going to come to you for solutions, or different ways for them to think about a situation to help them, figure out what that solution really needs to be. Because as a leader, sometimes, like, hey, come to me with solutions. I know what the problems are.
Legit.
But sometimes, especially, when people are getting started, like, they need that help. And that's what we're here for too, is to help them learn through that and help them go through all these different steps to really think about the impacts. How do we make those sound decisions and be confident in that, so that they can continue to, spread their wings and grow as a leader as well. So very well said. I appreciate, again, the stories that you broke down and speaking your heart to about Uncle Eddie, and what you I think things that you already knew, but even things that you learned, and just being able to see other people's feelings and thoughts and their aspects, and how they share their heart, again, about the impact that he had on their life. That's how you bring it all together, right? With integrity. So the three things that we focused on today for our legacy leaders out there, when we talk about integrity, again, humility and self-awareness, demonstrating true humility, and being intentional about being self-aware of what your strengths and your areas of opportunity are, and then being intentional of even going deeper and taking certain steps to be even, gain a higher level of self-awareness, because you see yourself one way, but the masses and the people out there may see you differently, right? So being able to get that information and analyze it will help with that self-awareness. And then we went into, operating in a mode of transparency, and as a person that can be and that is trusted. Being courageous in the decisions that you make, and how you display, those managerial decisions and that courage in those situations. And then consistently, again, using sound judgment and showing that level of discernment, and being able to know who to speak to, who to gain advice from, who to seek as wise counsel, analyzing your experiences, using that sound judgment, and really thinking through the impact of your decisions on others. And if you really focus on those three things, again, that will really help you to bring together just that growth of integrity within yourself, and help you to be known as somebody who has a very strong level of integrity. So that's what this episode, 15 was all about. Conducting ourselves at the highest ethical standards and using sound judgment in our decisions is how we want to boil all that down. So we want to cap, this series off of these foundational pillars of effective leadership. We talked about integrity, about continuous improvement, and then going all the way back to episode, I think that was 13. And really, again, kind of helping to build out these pillars. So we're going to wrap all of this up as we're talking about integrity with our next episode, which is going to be the fourth installment of our MBA series, Mentored by Adversity, with a good teammate, a good friend, a very cool and great personality and just individual. Ricky Baez is going to be joining us for that session, and hearing his story, hearing how he's been mentored by adversity, but again, also tying in from an HR perspective. He's an HR manager, what he feels about integrity. Maybe he'll even tell us some stories about not naming names, but situations where people were not showing high levels of integrity, and how that really, had, again, an impact on the team, on the business, and things of that nature. So be on the lookout for that. Again, that's going to be our next episode as we wrap this series up on these foundational pillars of effective leadership. So don't forget, number one, make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure that you're getting these episodes downloaded on a consistent basis. And go ahead and leave us a review like you're there. Yeah. Go ahead and type some words in there. Let us know what you think about the episode. We're talking about bringing things together with integrity. We mentioned 3, again, tenets, but this is not all comprehensive, right? I mean, we can continue to talk for hours, but we're not going to do that. So share your thoughts and some other things that you really feel helped somebody to build their character and help them be known for somebody who truly has very strong integrity. Number 2, take that screenshot, go ahead to Instagram, post it on your story, tag us at Legacy Leadership, tag myself at Coach_Jimmie G Jr., and then tag Devon at Leadership Docent. Again, give us some shout outs, give us some feedback, let us know what you thought about the episode. We certainly appreciate that. And then last but not least, share. Hit the share button if you're through your podcast platform. If you're watching us on the YouTube channel, you know where the buttons are. Find that little kite-looking icon, hit the share button, and share us with your friends and family and other individuals out there who are trying to do exactly what we're helping the masses to do. How do you really become a leader worth following, help others to do the same, and just like we talked about with Uncle Eddie, really leave a legacy for generations to come? That is what this podcast is all about. That is the goodness that we're bringing to you every week. So we hope that you guys have enjoyed episode 15. Again, be on the lookout for the next one as we hit our 4th installment of the NBA series. My friend, I appreciate you very much, and sharing, again, some touching words and thoughts that were inspiring, and again, also very heartfelt about your family. And again, my condolences to you and the family for your loss. So appreciate that very much, man. It was a pleasure for me to be able to hear those things and think about family, myself, and just thinking with the end in mind, folks. How when that time comes, because it's going to come for every single one of us,
it is.
What do you want people to say about you? What do you want your spouse? What do you want your best friend? What do you want the people that you've worked with, or maybe even people that you had minor interactions with, but it was so impactful that 30, 40 years later, they're going to be sharing these experiences. When the time comes, what do you want people to say about you? Start with the end in mind, and then how do I start conducting my life today and working towards growing in those aspects so that those are the type of impacts and those are the type of comments and words that people share about me at that particular time. So yeah, again, Jimmie Gonzalez, Anthony Devon Watts, we appreciate you guys very much. God bless and stay encouraged.
Thank you.
Rage on that beat, going crazy.
You have just listened to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, hosted by Jimmie Gonzalez and Devon Watts. Thank you, and we hope that you live, lead, and leave a legacy worth remembering. Until next time.